2 times. Again, you weren't exposed to that information. But the idea is that we got it instilled in our head, we can figure out the math. If somebody's really confused about it, you can explain that. Because if that's...
Can I ask questions like, what if I felt like the swamp water needed to be boiled before drinking, and that's why I said 12? Like, can you get into this?
You can definitely do that. In fact, you can see when I give exams, this is just for lecture purposes, this is one of my questions on exam, I would see is that you getting correct answers, because I actually have a verification, justification area on my exams. But for this situation, for me discussing this topic, you got it right, and you're thinking beyond what we talk about here. I actually give you kudos for what you just did. Again, hopefully not too many of us are going to be boiling swamp waters, but again, if you've ever been involved in the outdoors, you've got quite a bit... No, you're exactly right. In fact, that's very, very good. In fact, when I've done a lot of backpacking trips in the Maryland, the Pennsylvania regions, if you ever really do a lot of the experiences, you don't have water traveling with you, especially if you backpack. Backpack, you usually carry about a day to 2 days worth of water at the most. And on your map, you might have where it's 8 miles. You'll be able to find it. This is your water source. And from that site, the closest source is, let's say, 12 miles away, and you're desperate for water. There's been many times that I've actually come up there, and it says it's a spring. You identify the spring. Their notes say it's a spring. You get there, and what a spring is not, oh, my gosh, you see Perrier, and the water's just bubbling out. A spring would mean that you see water. You're looking on the ground. Where do you see water traces? You actually see that it might be just a trickle of something about the size of your finger just bubbling out of the dirt. That is your spring, so you have to clean that given region out, and you have to clean that. So therefore, this is a situation where even though it's warm, you'd still have to boil it. Well, in this situation, we were stuck. Not only was it bubbling out from the ground, which we had to find, it felt like a Jed Clampett, but there was buzzards everywhere, and there was bird guano in that given region. So now we're thinking we're going to die. And by the way, we didn't have enough fuel, so everybody's taking off their bandanas. We're filtering as best we could, but we made it out of there that day. Next one. Which is the following as an advantage of butane? Again, we went over this information in the past. My candle just went out. Now, let's see what you guys said. Most of you said it was because there was no priming. Who in the heck put on there about the shipping? I actually specifically identified that. Anyway, the idea that priming should have stood out. We had 71% of you that were actually paying attention. And again, happy face. Now we're going to identify what is that correct answer. Which of the following is an advantage of white gas stoves? All right. Let's see what you guys said about that. About 86% of you. So now we're not just guessing on it. We're seeing that the majority of us, even though we do have some guessers up here, fuel spills evaporate quickly. No priming required for white gas. Oh, you guys might see what you got here to see what happens. And in fact, I think if I remember that one correctly, we had, in fact, you can actually look at these reports at the very end. I thought that we actually had it between 1, 2, and 3. It was spread last time. Now we had some people that changed their mind. Again, why is it so confusing? I need to do this type of presentation because I gave you a lot of information. It's not like I just gave you like one fuel and you're going to remember it. I did this on purpose where it's confusing. I said high this, high low, this, that, all that good stuff. There's no way you're going to be able to retain this. But again, this is the reason why I'm doing this. Even though maybe a topic you may have some information on or some background in, it was purposely designed to be a little confusing. And then finally, this one here. In fact, you got 22 seconds on this one. This is a little game on what is it? Remember we talked about this the very first slide. Again, let's say this is really, really important. What is the low-cost, low-heat fuel source? Which one? If you could scramble it, you have some letters missing here so that you'd actually have your answer. I don't like this. This is something that's actually innate within the program.
Are any of those right?
And they are correct, but here's the problem. You don't just like pop them in. The answer is scrambled. In fact, I don't know if too many of us get this. This is something that actually comes in with the software. If you guys have played with that before, let's say.
Time you figure out that the correct one is right, like time's gone.
Well, I know, and I did give you 22 seconds on this one. Again, I could have said no time at all, took the time off. But really, I just want to show that this is probably something that most of us aren't familiar with. I got to scramble the answer to fit in there. If I could just say, you know, what goes after the E, what goes after the N, it's all in some kind of order down below, then I think you'd figure that one out. But by default, you have to figure out all those lines. Now, which one? So this is a situation probably I'd have to give you about a minute or two to figure this out. But again, I just gave you 22 seconds, knowing that you are going to get it right. Let's see what happens. I didn't give you anything. But anyway, that's what that was. You can actually have some games that are already instilled within the software that you can tie it to the very beginning. If you remember, one of our first slides was this. And what is the answer for that? 3. It's actually 3. That space gives it away because he also, this is a two-term word, it was denatured alcohol. It doesn't recognize that, so it didn't take that space. So what it did do is it put a space right there, so it sort of gave that one away. All right? No big deal. Now, another thing that's nice about working with TurningPoint is that you can actually then look at some graphical results by question. Results. Oh, again, there's other things you can do as well. You can actually get some reports. These four here are the ones that I really like. You actually get some graphical results by the question, so I can see where you're at from the first to the last, see if I need some concerns. Results by the given question, individual scoring. Now, if I do want to tie this in, and I did make those last slides, I do this often where I'm not going to give a quiz. I just talk to you about these elements. In fact, I might not even do it this class. I'm going to give one class time for you to look it over your notes. I'm then going to have the tail end of my next lecture. Now I'm going to fire 4 slides at you. See if you, for instance, I do this quite often in my finance. So I'm going to find out if you understand the direct, indirect, change of fixed, and variable type costs. And I give all these different scenarios. Now what happens is, instead of me having you pass it to your partner where you actually can grade it, and I can trust that you are learning this, and your partner's not going to try to help you out by giving you a little higher score, I can actually pull this up and find out exactly where you're at. If I see that Joe is really not getting this, I may want to talk to him on the side and say, Joe, come here, let me help you out here. But now I don't have to be a truce and say, who doesn't understand this? I have this report and identifies who does or who doesn't get this information. And then also there's a word outline. I like this too because, you know what, now I have some test questions if I wanted to. They're actually made up for me. Now, see if I can pull this up here real quickly. Here, this is the end of this. Where I do this for them is going right to my tools. I'm going to go right into my Turning. Sorry, I don't have a mouse up here. Turning reports. Okay, I'm going to generate some reports. Current session. And then you have all these different options. Again, you can do them all. Just give me all this information. But the ones that I really like, I could just click this entire thing here, but I'll show you what it is. There's 2 of them. Graphical results by question and results by question. Those are the 2 that I identified that I really like. Then I like to go down to this one here, other reports. Individual scoring, and then I also like to have my outline. It's actually a Word document. Again, remember, these go anywhere from Excel to Word. And then I'm hoping this is going to work where I actually can see my tabs. I go down here and I generate my report. It takes just a few seconds. See if it does it. Sometimes, like I have 2 monitors, and I can't see my tabs. We'll see if this does it. Here. Oh, they do have my tabs. If you notice, I have all my tabs right here. Results by question, individual scoring, I can move it along. But anyway, I can now see generically my first one. Before I even introduced this lecture material, I can see that you guys were stuck. 50% of you thought this. Now look at this one here. The next one was how many quarts or liters would you need on a 7-day outing? You all got it. Well, of you 2 that answered 100%, don't you? You got it correct. Now, granted, it was your first button, so I assume that probably was correct. But the idea is that I can see, you know what, is that a concern? I'll say, if I generically just look at my figure here, I'll say, you know what, no problem. I need to skip this. You guys know that information. That's not true. I found only 2 of you actually answered in the very beginning. Again, because this is a lecture, we're trying to get to the principles of this. Is it? Am I going to give you 12 seconds? No, I don't. Time is not as big of an issue for me. But let's say that I have it set for 30 seconds or 45 seconds, or have it where when the last person responds, then it tells me that, and I can actually see that, and I can go on. But again, I'm just trying to get the information out to you. So I have that information here. I break it all down. I can see that not other than that one, I can see that most of you are responding, most of you responding, and you are confused. So I'm glad to see that. And then it goes down to the end. I can see every one of these. And it gets a little better here. I can see that now I see most of your responses are now more uniform. I can go in here and I can actually find the results by the given question. I can break that down instead of seeing that visual. How many actually did what? And again, I only have 2 people respond, 2 people respond, so many respond. Again, that's because of the time. I only give you 10 seconds. Most of you are trying to even read the question, let alone am I going to respond to it correctly. Individual scoring. Now I can actually see who did what and find out which response pad you are, and then go from there. Again, so that can be very, very useful. And then another one. Again, there's others that you could use as well. Where's that booger at? I wonder if I didn't make that report. Doesn't look like my Word file was. I thought I marked it. But anyway, what typically happens next? I wish you could see it. It's not coming up. But you actually get a Word file and actually has your exact questions spelled out in Word format, breaks it down, what were the questions, and again, you can just take that thing and now you transfer it straight word for word as a file to your exam.